Vamos, now it's us. Vamos us. Olive Garden us. White House for us. Sabra Hamas. Hasbara sus.
Hello, and welcome to Bad Hasbara, the world's most moral podcast. My name is Matt Lieb. I am going to be your most moral co-host for this podcast. So excited to have all of you here. Thanks for everyone who listened to the last episode we did yesterday, and in which we thought Noam Chomsky had died. That's a fun one. That was, that'll go down in infamy as, one of those times where we got. And I hope you enjoyed all of the added, stuff I put in there where I just kept popping in and saying, just kidding, he didn't die over and over in post. Listen, it's not a live show, but sometimes we make the same mistakes as a live show. So thanks to everyone out there who listened to that. And shout out to Omar Badar for that. He is a great guest, and we'll have him back soon to talk about an alive Noam Chomsky. One more shout out, producer Adam Levin, and final shout out. Remember, I'll be in Chicago on Monday and Tuesday, August 19th and 20th. We're going to do a live podcast at the Lincoln Lodge on the 19th, and on the 20th, myself and my wife, Francesca Fiorentini, are going to be doing stand-up. It's going to be a fun show. Please get your tickets. They're in the bio. Okay, we're going to bring in our most moral co-host. That's right, the man, the myth, the legend. It is Daniel Mate. What's up, buddy?
Eid Mubarak and happy Juneteenth, my brother.
Oh, thank you. Now,
are there any other holidays that have nothing to do with you and me that I could wish you?
I'm sure we could appropriate some more holidays. Indigenous Peoples Day, definitely could appropriate that one. We seem to do that sometimes as Jews.
I'm expecting this year there's going to be a whole lot of Zionists posting Happy Indigenous Peoples Day.
It's going to be so egregious. I'm going to cry. I'm just going to watch all of these blonde-haired, blue-eyed white people just being like, as an Indigenous person, it'll be great and fun. I'm excited to do this episode because we have listen, I'm excited to do all episodes of this podcast, but we have a great guest. Someone who I've been wanting to get on for a while. This is someone who is the host of Night School on YouTube. You've seen him in various debates. You've seen him get fired by CNN for giving a speech that was just filled with facts and truth. Which
most moral firing.
Yes, it was the world's most moral firing. Ladies and gentlemen and everyone else, welcome to the podcast, Marc Lamont Hill.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you doing? How's life?
I was really on an emotional roller coaster watching you guys yesterday, thinking that Chomsky was dead.
Yeah, well, listen.
It really fucked me up, guys. But then it worked out just fine because then he wasn't dead. And then, that's way better than him being dead.
Yeah, I know. I was like, it's good that he's not dead, but there was, the smallest, evilest part of me like going, it would be really better for this episode.
Right.
If he
It was like that Simpsons episode where Bart's in science class and they play him an instructional video. It's like, have you ever thought about what the world would be like without zinc? And sorry, the metal filings in that gun you're trying to shoot yourself with, they were made with zinc. And Timmy's like, come back, zinc, come back. So we gave you a nightmare, we pulled you out of it, and now you can be.
Yeah.
You can go to.
Here's the problem. He's playing with house money at this point. So he could die like tomorrow, and if he dies tomorrow, it's so anticlimactic. I mean, he deserves better.
I know.
Than what'll happen if he dies like tomorrow. So he kind of has to live like another 6 months or a year.
Yeah, at least. Yeah, it's unfortunate because, this is, I don't want to add more pressure to a man who's already, spent his life being harassed by all sorts of people. But I'm going to need him to live for a while so that we can, do a proper eulogy later in life. But also, like I said on the podcast yesterday, hey, isn't it nice to do a eulogy to someone who's still alive?
Well, that's all I do. I worked at BET. I worked at BET full time for over a decade.
Yeah.
And so, news organizations tend to write eulogies for people before they die. So you're good.
That's right.
But when it's like, ABC or CNN, you write them for people like Harry Belafonte or Jimmy Carter.
Sure.
I was making them for like Lil Wayne.
He was music.
Yeah. I was writing so many eulogies for people who were like 24.
That's so fucked. Just what do you have to put the cause of death on there? Because that was like, if I had a few guesses, lean would be one of the guesses.
We didn't write it, but we all knew. It's like, okay, there's only one reason to be writing a eulogy for Lil Wayne.
Yeah. Well,
a syrup related death. I saw a very funny tweet. Someone said, "R.I.P. Noam Chomsky. You spent your life teaching people the importance of critiquing the media, and one unsourced tweet says you're dead, and the world believes it."
I know.
So true.
That felt like a personal attack personally, but hey, good thing is he's still alive. He's still with us, which means that there's still a chance he'll be on this podcast. Which
you want him on your podcast? You should get him on your podcast.
I mean, if
he's not speaking, he hasn't been actually able to speak since his stroke last summer. Apparently,
I interviewed him right before the stroke.
Man,
and it was a
great
he have the beard? Interview. He had there was like moths flying out of it. I don't know if he like left the office in like 2 years, but I thought it was like one of his last interviews, so I was going to repost it yesterday, and then he kept living. So, but if he gets his voice back, I'm sure he'd come on Bad Hasbara. I mean, where else would he go?
I know this is, the one last stop before eternity, and it's the stupidest podcast in existence.
The biggest tension in that episode would be, can we get him to smile? Or like, I mean, he's always had a pretty sardonic sense of humor, or at least a very deadpan one. But like,
sure,
can we get him at this age to riff with us, to do the banter?
Tell him Dershowitz tripped and chipped his tooth or something. He will beam.
He will laugh for a year straight.
Maybe he'll come out of all of this really giggly.
Oh, that'd be sick.
It's fair.
I wanted to talk to you first about I've been watching Night School, your new YouTube show, and I think it's great.
Thank you.
You have this ability to debate with people in a way that I think is it's a rare gift, because you're neither a Jewish anti-Zionist nor a Palestinian. And so I feel like in the debates with Zionists that you do, you can feel the internal anti-blackness within them, just like bubbling and wanting to come out in this way that you just don't see with any other types of debates, like the way that like an anti-Zionist would debate a Zionist. Like the Zionist just hates you for being a traitor or a capo, or Palestinian, they're like, well, you just hate me for existing. But with you, I feel like it is it's almost a superpower, the way you're able to bring out kind of the the well-hidden demon of many Zionists.
That's the goal.
Yeah. And I think you pull it off. I wanted to talk about one interview in particular, a debate that you did with this is an attorney named Mark Sarlson. Yeah,
that's the guy whose testicles haven't descended yet.
Yeah, so
I think they did descend, and they had second thoughts.
They're like, no, I don't want to be associated with this guy.
Yes.
Yeah, he he's got a weird voice. He's just kind of like, hey, he's like a kind of a Zionist Mickey Mouse of sorts.
Yes.
And
which was unsettling, by the way, because I can
imagine
he talks so menacingly on X, on Twitter or whatever.
Of course.
I'm expecting this rugged, tough talking attorney, maybe a former IDF soldier.
Yeah. You're like, hey, you're a fucking anti-Semite, all right? That's what I think. And instead he's like, I think you hate the Jews.
A land without people for a people without a land. They never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity.
Like this is like weird voice aside. What I loved about this debate was the way that this person, there's a certain type of Zionist that exists now that is accidentally doing good anti-Zionist praxis, where they they understand the Hasbara talking points, but they don't really understand when is the most strategic way to deploy them.
Right.
And so he is kind of going scattershot with you. He first called you an anti-Semite for, you did a tweet in which you said that Netanyahu was lying about how tragic it was that civilians were killed during the Rafah strike that killed 45 plus people at the end of May.
Yeah, he called it a tragic mistake.
Yes, a tragic mistake. And he called you an anti-Semite for that. And that's essentially the premise of his argument seems to be that it's anti-Semitic to think that Israel can do bad things, which is, I mean, that's a sloppy way of doing the Hasbara. Usually I find more people, at least the ones in a position of doing like, public relations, they at least try to make it sound like they're, not just slinging out the word, just to end the argument.
Or was the accusation that you're an anti-Semite because you doubted the sincerity of a Jew's,
yes,
a Jewish person's heartfelt remorse and contrition
after a military incursion? Yeah, what you said is probably what he would have said had he been more articulate and thoughtful or better trained.
Right.
Because what they usually do is they make three or four steps, and they kind of walk you down those steps, and then you end up in anti-Semitiville, right? So it's like, oh, well, you're doubting it, and why are you doubting it, right? The state issued information. Well, why are you questioning the state? You don't question other states, you're only questioning the Jewish state. If the Jewish state is only being questioned, then it must be because you are anti-Semitic, because the only distinguishing factor is that they are Jewish. The problem is he jumped straight there, and because he does the kind of paint by the numbers mudslinging, the arguments that I made in response didn't fit the pattern he was trying to develop. So so I'm like, well, I don't trust anybody. He said first, it's like, why are you not trusting Netanyahu? On what basis? I'm like, well, because he lies a lot.
Right. Yeah.
He lies a lot. And so he's like, but he didn't lie this time. And I'm like, true. But if someone lies 11 times, I don't have to wait for them to lie on the 12th to say, I don't trust this person. And if I make that claim, that doesn't make, it's not a mark against me that I don't trust the person. But then beyond that, I'm saying that there's considerable evidence that this was foreseeable. So I'm doubting both that he saw it as tragic, because he often talks about Palestinians as if they are not human beings. But I'm also doubting that it's an accident. And so
he couldn't get past the idea that it is, that he couldn't get past his feigned, possibly, suspicion that anyone who claims that Jews would in any way want someone to die who didn't deserve to die by whatever standard, he would put that as, is anti-Semitic. He just is like, no, but Israel, the fact that you would assume that Israel did a bad thing is that alone is anti-Semitic. And you have this great moment between you guys where you're talking about international law, and I just want to play a little bit of that
famously anti-Semitic field. I had an Israeli soldier, an active duty reservist, tell me that the minute I brought up international law and human rights law, he's like, okay, now we're talking about anti-Semitic institutions. I'm like, okay, so there's literally there's no standards outside of your own solipsistic framework.
Yes,
that we can appeal to.
There's a great clip of where he basically says that verbatim, but we'll get into that in a second. First, here's this clip.
But here's the feeling.
That's not what the law says. That's not international law.
Mark, you're playing. I don't know what international law is. Mark, you're playing.
You should.
Israel.
Simple yes or no. Does Israel have a legal duty to avoid killing civilians?
Your question is, in fact, anti-Semitic, and here's why. You are assuming in your question that Israel doesn't avoid killing civilians.
No, I didn't assume anything. I'm asking you a question. You said that you don't know what international law is. I was making an argument to you that there are very clear dictates of international law that Israel claims to abide by. I was making the point from your perspective that Israel says it does follow international law. And after the ICJ decision, they said we already follow international law. So it's just true. But that's all I said. You call me an anti-Semite again.
Just like, that's true. They do follow international law. That thing that I just claimed a second ago, I doesn't know exists.
They don't follow it if they're supposed to.
Mr. Hill, Mr. Lamont Hill, do you own in your record collection by any chance the album Fear of a Black Planet by Public Enemy? If so, I can attest that there is a song called Welcome to the Terror Dome on which Chuck D says, so-called chosen frozen, apology made to whoever pleases, still they got me like Jesus. Game, set, match, you're an anti-Semite.
Right. That's basically what his arguments are like.
It's like, it's an insane thing to watch someone so like quickly go from I don't know what international law is, and it's anti-Semitic for you to say that, to ask whether or not Israel should follow it because it is automatically presumes that they don't, which is like, that's not how questions work.
Right. Right.
Like and then for him to go like, and by the way, they do follow international law. And so he answers, it's the way in which this debate goes is very much like the way the last 8 months have gone in terms of Hasbara, whereas before you would have one piece of like propaganda that kind of just sat out there for a while. People would talk about it. People would try to, in the public sphere debate one particular thing, did Israel kill Shireen Abu Akleh? And then eventually all of the Israeli lies would be, basically admitted to, and then people would forget at that point. They'd stop caring. In the last 8 months, obviously, they've gone from like, we didn't bomb hospitals to we had to bomb that hospital in the matter of, 24 hours. His debate tactic seems to be the same, which is to just give you a quick, like, this is like Hasbara 101 on like 2x speed. He is really, and at one point you kind of try to help him. Like, you're very kind to this grotesque liar in a way that I think I like appreciated, because I also, as much as these people are doing an act that I find disgusting, I'm like, come on, man, if you're gonna do this in public, you gotta at least look normal.
Right.
Let us help you out.
I get embarrassed for them, and
yes,
the arguments are so bad. It's so bad, and it's such sloppy thinking and such dishonesty, and the combination of those things makes it really tough to have a conversation.
Yeah, and here's one where you're doing your best to help this guy who is disputing the numbers of dead Palestinians because of Hamas, and he seems to have no idea what Hamas actually is.
Right.
All right, so here,
Gaza Health Ministry is run by Hamas. Every municipal entity in all of Gaza
is run by the military wing of Hamas. The military wing of Hamas has absolutely no impact on the Gaza Health Ministry. But again, historically, again, this is verifiable information.
Is there a non-military wing of Hamas?
Yes, and you should know that if you're going to debate this issue. There is. You do understand this.
You're like, bro, when you agreed to this, you should have at the very least read something in a book or anything. Honestly, something longer than 2 paragraphs.
I'm surprised he didn't. I'm surprised he didn't pivot at that moment to, okay, now that correction was anti-Semitic. You're presuming that a Jew would not know that, in fact, yes, there is a non-military wing. You're presuming that I wasn't being ironic.
Yeah. It's just a prank, bro. All right, here we go.
Wing of Al-Qaeda. If you're a member of Hamas, you're a terrorist and you should be killed. And I don't care what your title is.
Okay,
that's spicy.
You understand? Like, you really thought that was a zinger.
That for him was just like, I mean, it kind of mask off in a way where he is, number one, he doesn't know what Hamas is. I mean, it's clear that he doesn't understand that they do have like civil and bureaucratic duties that they do.
Right.
I mean, they are
government.
They are government. They are running Gaza. Gaza as not running as in like guys with guns run. I mean, like a government that runs things like, public transportation or health. That's what the duties of a government does. And the way in which he's just like, if you are Hamas, you are a terrorist, you deserve to die. Just like Al Qaeda, just like ISIS and all that stuff is just, it speaks to the level of ignorance within the kind of genocidal thinking of a Zionist, where you're clearly not going to do any research past what maybe you've heard in passing about what Hamas is, and you're just being like, okay, I can comfortably say they deserve to die. It is,
and their next door neighbors deserve to die too, according to Israel's, good neighbor policy. I mean, these people will expand from that kernel of, if I can associate you if you make me think of Hamas, if you make me scared, you deserve to die. I mean,
you're right.
Yeah, it is. It's wild. I just want to play my favorite moment from this debate, in which he does the fastest circular argument I think I've ever seen in public. Here we go.
If I pull up evidence, even if you don't agree with it, if I'm using evidence, would that then nullify your claim that it was anti-Semitism?
You don't have evidence. It doesn't matter what you show me.
You said no matter what I show you, it won't count as evidence to you. Why?
Yeah.
Why won't it count as evidence even if I show it to you?
Because Israel is not doing this. There's no evidence.
You have to circular argument. You're saying you haven't seen any evidence. I'm saying let me show you the evidence. You're saying no matter what you show me, it won't count as evidence because it doesn't exist. And I'm saying, how do you know it doesn't exist? You're saying, because I haven't seen any. And I'm saying, well, let me show you. And you're saying, but it doesn't matter what you show me. It's a circle. You're saying that no matter what you see, it won't count as evidence to you.
Show me a targeting system where the Israeli Air Force said, let's go target.
There have been numerous examples. Do you trust Human Rights Watch?
No, God, no. Nor should you.
Do you trust Amnesty International?
No, God, no. Nor should you.
What human rights organization do you trust? Name one.
I'd have to think. I don't trust most. They're all pretty much.
You would, and that's the problem. You would have to think.
Not big on that thinky thing.
Yeah. Whenever someone forces you to think, that's also an act of aggressive anti-Semitism.
Man, that circular argument, that was a quadruple Lutz. That was just a...
Yeah.
It's like, do you hear yourself? Even watching it now, my blood pressure is going back. I'm like, do you hear yourself?
Yeah. You go on. It ends so perfectly here.
Okay, so you don't trust human rights organizations. Do you trust the UN?
Hell no. We should pull out of the UN.
What international legal bodies do you trust?
NATO.
Okay, so you know they do investigations of these things, right?
They do all the time. NATO conducts investigations.
What investigation of Gaza did NATO do?
Why would they do an investigation of Gaza?
I just said they don't do that.
Mark, like I said, the people who are going to say Israel's doing this are groups that have a predisposition to hating it.
That is the most incredible moment where it's like, it's so frustrating to be in that position, because there's this hope that you have that you're going to be able to break through to somebody, Yeah, I mean, I believe this too. Like, for months, I tried talking to people who I knew personally and just trying to be like, how can I break through this like narrative that you've been constructing your whole life essentially.
Right.
And it is just like, it is nothing but defense mechanisms. Like, how do you find do you find it useful to talk to people either online or individually?
So I do it for two reasons, right? Mm-hmm. One is more noble than the other. Mm-hmm. Both, though, the most moral reasons. Just
good.
Level. The first reason is the reason I used to be on Fox News debating Bill O'Reilly 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
No one in the history of cable news, and certainly not Bill O'Reilly, is going to say, you know what, you made a good argument. I'm wrong. Let's go to commercial, right? It just doesn't happen. the point of the debate is not, from my perspective, to convince the interlocutor. I don't care if Bill O'Reilly's convinced.
Right.
But the people watching us debate know that I won.
Yeah.
Or at least hear my argument and are persuaded by it. So the value of the debate doesn't rest upon, or the legitimacy of the debate doesn't rest upon whether or not this guy here, it realized that he made the world's dumbest argument. It doesn't matter. It's actually more powerful to me if he doesn't.
Right.
Because then the world watches and says, damn, that was a dumbass argument. That's who I've been siding with? Maybe I need to read more.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to learn more. So it actually works that he gets his ass kicked.
Yeah.
At that level, right? If he were persuaded, it'd be great, but like that doesn't happen, right? The other reason, it still leans into the first reason, but it's also undergirded by a whole lot of ego stuff, right? And that is that they think I'm stupid, a lot of them. I watch, when I do Al Jazeera, I watch the literal sigh of relief on the Israeli general's face, or Friedman's face, or Danny Danon's face, or Danon's face, or whoever, when they come on, because they see somebody who they immediately read as incapable of defeating them or even holding them properly accountable.
Right.
As an interviewer at that moment, I'm not there to debate them. I'm there to hold them accountable. Those two things blur when the person's fighting you back. But there's a way that they assume very little. And so the value of it for me is at a certain level personal. Like, I just love to kick their ass. But again, it also is a pedagogical thing for the audience. They learn also. Oftentimes I on Al Jazeera, I'm able to successfully hold these people accountable because they back themselves into corners and they make admissions that they otherwise wouldn't, because they assume that I don't know anything. And as they don't know who I am, right? They don't follow American media, and they don't know that I've studied this, or that I teach this, or that I've written books on this. They don't know. And then on Twitter, you get the people who get the kind of Brian Scalabrine syndrome. I don't know if you ever watched.
Yeah. Brian Scalabrine, was he the Celtics guy with the big the redhead? Yeah,
he's the big redhead that everybody. He was like the go-to person for that guy can't play. It's like if you're going to make fun of the Jacksons, you make fun of Tito, right? Tito's actually a phenomenal musician, right? But he's not Janet Jackson. He's not Michael Jackson. He's not even Jermaine Jackson.
I used to do it with Mark Madsen because I'm from Los Angeles. He was my go-to. But Brian Scalabrine is good too.
It's great. Well, Scalabrine got tired of it. So all the people that be like, I could kick Scalabrine, I could beat Scalabrine. Watch YouTube. He has a whole series of people. He made a whole web series of him playing ordinary people in basketball and just beating the living shit out of them. Right? And
that's great.
What he says to them is, I'm closer to LeBron James than you are to me. Right?
That's right.
They don't get that.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes 90% of people I debate are these scholars and these politicians and these people. And every once in a while, you get a guy like this guy who's, I don't just pick any tomato can, but like a guy like this who's a lawyer, who's smart, who's well-read, allegedly, who says, if I just had a minute with Mark, I'd kick his ass. And then I want them to see that that's not what this is going to be. This is going to be WWF Saturday morning. I'm the Ultimate Warrior, you're El Conquistador. And this is just going to end that way, right? You're the tomato can.
Yeah. You could tell his voice was getting higher and higher as it went on, He just was getting more and more, like he realized, oh shit, I fucked up.
Right.
I thought this guy was going to be stupid.
I immediately regret this decision.
Oh God, I thought he was just going to do raps at me.
Right.
I'll never forgive Goofy for suggesting this.
Goofy, get in here. Daniel, you said you had a question?
Yeah. So, Matt mentioned the latent and not so latent or blatant anti-blackness that will crop up in these spaces, because when you're dealing with Zionism, you're dealing with a very, ethnically powder-kegged ideology that is already looking at the world through that lens. So it's maybe not surprising. We had the firing of Breonna Joy Gray last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Over an
alleged eye roll
expression.
Yeah.
An alleged eye roll, and then there's Candace Owens, who has, I've seen her interview some real slimy Zionists who will do the same thing that this guy did to you, and just come out, has it been? Is it strange for you because I saw her also interview Norman Finkelstein. She did a beautiful job interviewing him back in the fall. Has it been strange finding yourself on the same side of something as her? And what can you say more generally about the racial dynamics here, especially given, I made reference to that whole Public Enemy controversy, the history of, the accusations of anti-Semitism in the Black community, all this kind of stuff, all just the subtext of it all. What's that been like?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple pieces to that. First, the Candace Owens part. I mean, it's just Candace has done an extraordinary job of endearing herself to white people and to the right. Like, no one is confusing her as being on the left or even the center.
Yeah.
So she's earned some grace here. She's the person who's saying, or at least the benefit of the doubt, right? She's the one who says racism
doesn't exist, or what?
I mean, I don't want to overstate her position, but I'll say the things that I say are racist, or that I think most people would say are racist, she does not identify as racist. She has no problem holding the Black community accountable for things that I think are actually systemic and structural. Mm-hmm. She has been a loud voice saying that ain't racist, despite what you Black people are saying.
Right.
So you would think that she's earned, some credibility on that issue, even if I think she's wrong, even though I think she's wrong. But when it comes to her saying, well, wait a minute, the same energy that I'm using to say that we have to be honest about what's going on in the Black community, or we have to be honest about whatever pathology we think Negroes have, we got to do the same thing when a Republican congressman says there are no innocent Palestinians or there are no Palestinian civilians, right? How can that be okay?
Right.
And so she doesn't get that grace. And so the question is why? Some of it I don't think is racial. I think the primary reason is she's simply on the wrong side of the Zionist critique. And, that transcends political party.
Oh, it sure does.
and so they're like, well, and I think they did give her grace. I think if it's me saying the same things that Candace says, I think she gets fired a lot faster.
Sure.
But but she's still willing to blame Black people. Oh yeah, but she still hates trans folk. These are like the arguments in her favor. Like
someone wrote that down on a whiteboard. Pros of Candace Owens. Hates Black people. Just cons. Criticizes Israel.
Right.
That's literally on the pro side. You're right.
And Ben Shapiro's jumping up to try and reach the thing on the whiteboard, being like, hates Israel. What more is there to say?
Someone get me a step stool.
Exactly. It's the strangest thing I've ever seen. But then there's also a sense that, well, two things. One, that Black people shouldn't be talking about this. How dare you talk about this? Mm-hmm. And to the extent that you're talking about it, you should only be talking about it from the perspective of a Black person who has benefited from the philanthropy and the social allyship of Jewish people in the 1960s. Basically, you owe us one.
Do you know how fucking embarrassing that is? As a Jew, and this is for the first time I've said as a Jew on the show, I want to point that out, but I gotta say, one of the most embarrassing things in the world is the amount of white Jewish people who publicly, especially after October 7th, were just like, after all we've done for you Black people.
Yes. And
everything.
And like the 2020 moment reset that, because before it used to be, what about, Schwerner and Goodman, Now we were there in Minnesota in 2020. So you really owe us like recent stuff. And that argument, I could see why you'd be embarrassed by it. You could see why I'd be annoyed by it.
Yeah.
It's like, you should be on the right side of history at all times, right? We all should be struggling to be on the right side of history. Standing with Dr. King was the right side of history. Standing with Netanyahu isn't. It's kind of that simple.
Yeah. Just like being openly transactional about something in which you claim there's like a morality involved.
Anti-Semitic. Matt. Jews are not transactional. That's anti-Semitic.
That's true. That's right. There's a long history of transactions that was, of course,
in
Europe.
And that's and also it's transactional phobic.
That's right. It is transphobic. That's
true. You
are
transphobic. I didn't even.
Yeah, we're phobic of those. Solid work. Daniel is he's the pun master. He can't stop himself. It's a disease. But go on. So there's this
idea that like, how dare you stay in your place, right? Which is the same thing they told Martin Luther King in 1967 when he gives the speech at Riverside on April 4th of 67, when he gives the speech about the war in Vietnam. At this point, Lyndon Johnson is like, yo, we stay in a Negro preacher's place. This is not, foreign policy is not your matter.
Yes.
So there's a long history of skepticism of Black kind of cosmopolitanism and a wariness of Black political internationalism. They don't want us doing that stuff.
Yeah.
And the other slice of it is just a more fundamental white supremacist argument that we're just not that smart, right?
Right.
And so it's like you shouldn't be doing this, and even if you do it, you're probably going to do it really bad because you're not that bright. And so all of this, I think, plays into how Candace Owens gets responded to. And it does make a kind of a strange bedfellow for a moment, because you're like, wait a minute, I'm out here standing in for Candace Owens. Now, and she says things that I do think have been anti-Semitic.
Oh yeah. I occasionally, like, you know, the most annoying thing in the world is watching people like drag someone for doing something that I'm like, that's actually a perfectly fair critique of Israel. And then you see another tweet that's just like, you know, the Jews killed Christ altogether and they'll kill Christ again. And you're like, God, okay, well, I can't defend that.
Right.
Know?
Yeah, if you're gonna invoke Christ in defending Palestine, there's a not too narrow but also not too wide swath of uses. You know, you could talk about the least of these, and you know, Cornell. I think Cornell has Jesus down in terms of a resource for pro-Palestine activism. But Candace sometimes veers into
it's too slippery. Look, you don't have to mention Jesus, and you don't have to mention Hitler.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And very rarely do people invoke either, and it works out well. Right.
Who else is there?
Yeah.
Those are the only two guys in
There's
history.
only two people in history who are good at comparing to, and that's Hitler and Jesus.
It's like, just don't mention Hitler and things will be fine.
Yeah.
And if you're criticizing Jews throughout history, don't mention Jesus. Unless you're saying, just don't say it. Because even what I'm about to say will be misrepresented.
No, right. I mean, even so, I feel like, you know, there's something to be said for the fact that I try my best not to be the tone police, because at this point, the tone policing is just actual, like, ACAB includes tone police. You know what I mean? Like, it is a way in which you can find it's a way to derail a conversation or perfectly legitimate critique. And so I try not to. It
becomes a distract, and that's my point.
Yes.
But I find the people who do it, a lot of times they do it because they actually are anti-Semitic, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
Like, I've never needed to leverage Hitler in an argument. It just doesn't make sense. Or like when Candace, you know, a year or two ago was saying that, you know, Hitler's problem basically was, you know, that he went commercial. He didn't stay on the underground, you know.
Right. Yeah. That he sold out.
He sold out, right. You know, the major labels all over. Like, just don't mention Hitler. Like, but anyway, beyond that part of it, you know, so it's an awkward place to be with the Candace Owens piece of it, because now I'm defending her on principle because I think she's correct in her critique at this moment. And I think that the way that Michael Barclay was talking to Rabbi Barclay, talking to her was condescending and misses the point. Right, condescending is generous. You're right, and I think she and it caused her to kind of double down in a place where she could have said, "Hey, I didn't understand. I called her a witch, and yes, there's a long history of Jews being called witches and saying they have horns and all these other things that are deeply rooted in anti-Semitic tropes. Had I known that, I would have used a different one. But that wasn't my intent." She could have said that. But because he's being a dick, she decides to double down on that side too. And so it just becomes a really unproductive conversation. Yeah.
Well, she's a reactionary at heart. So it kind of makes sense as to, you know, where that would go. Yeah.
Right. But to me, the more fundamental question around the race and racism stuff is less at the interpersonal level and more at the structural level, right? Which is how does the state of Israel create an ethno-state that reinforces the racial logics of white supremacy?
Yes.
You know, and there's a way that that Jewish people from Eastern Europe who go to inform the state of Israel are able to kind of embrace and access a kind of whiteness that they couldn't access in Europe because they were racialized, right? The very idea of racializing Jews is an act of anti-Semitism. To construct Jews as a race in the eugenicist sense is racism, and it's anti-Semitic. And to think that Jews are different biologically is anti-Semitic. And so, but they were seen as not white. And same thing in the United States when we cut off immigration to Eastern European Jews, to Italians, to to Irish.
Yeah.
But eventually they were able to buy into whiteness. There's a way that the state of Israel allows that particular swath, particularly the Ashkenazim, to become white.
Yeah.
And I'm not, and I know people will hear that and deliberately misrepresent it, so I can't worry about that. But what I will say is, when I say that, that's not to say that Jews are just white. There's always complexities here. There's always ethnicity. There's always race. There's all these things that complicate how we see and read people. But the point is that the racial logics and imperatives of white supremacy become normative for Ashkenazim in Israel at the expense of other folks. So by the time you get to the 1980s, and you have Operation Moses, for example, in '84, when they're airlifting the Beit Israel from Ethiopia into the state of Israel, part of the anxiety, part of the moral and social panic of the nation was, we're bringing people who are not legibly Jewish to us, and people who aren't white, and people, and because our Jewishness is bound up in particular certain understandings of what we're going to look like. We got anxieties about that, and we just as African people. So we've been watching Sally Struthers, on TV. I don't know, Save the Children. It's like we have stereotypes about that shit too, right? So all of that becomes part of the conversation, and so the anti-blackness that is in Israel, and it's not just on the Israeli side; it's on the Palestinian side too. Palestinians are anti. I mean, I have stood at a checkpoint with Palestinians yelling at Israeli soldiers, and they got special criticisms for the Beit Israel from Ethiopia. So I'm like, all right, chill. It's like, you pig. I'm like, yeah, you're an animal. Yeah, you're an occupier. Yeah, you black man. Easy. Easy. Finish way. Let me cool for it. And so like, so I'm it's not one sided, but the whole point is that the white supremacist piece of it leaks into the resistance to black critics of Israel as well.
Right. Yeah. And in terms of, the intersections of power there also is an incredibly important point to make, the difference between, the occupied, yelling something that is, abhorrent, something racist towards a black occupier is different than the systemic and structural racism within, Israeli society and American society. That's whiteness is obviously a construction, and so this the point of the construction and the point of racism is the power aspect.
I only learned this year that there was a Black Panther Party in Israel, in Jerusalem, formed of Mizrahim.
Yeah,
they made a Black Panther Haggadah back in the I think 60s or 70s, and they cast Golda Meir as Hitler. Sorry, not Hitler. Excuse me, Pharaoh. I did. And it's really remarkable to and also learning that at least back in the 50s, there was a fair amount of conversation between Mizrahi Jews and Palestinians in terms of, they understood something about each other's experience. And I'm still learning about this. I can't speak on it authoritatively, but that racial dynamic, the whitening of Eastern European Jews and the imposition of a white supremacist order has had implications for many, many communities there.
Absolutely. And it reminds you that the racial frameworks of the United States can't just be exported. So, I've spent the last 9 years studying at the Afro-Palestinian community in East Jerusalem. I spent a lot of time there. I used to spend a lot of time there. Post-COVID, I don't go back. But, and, my first instinct when I see in East Jerusalem, Afro-Palestinians, they're black. So I was like, oh, what is it like to be black here? If Palestinian is bad, damn, now you're black too. Like, shit, can't get better. I mean, no one's ever like, well, it's better because black, So, but as I learned there, I had to reimagine racialization. And the thing that you get racialized as is Palestinian, not as black. And so, which is why when I ask Palestinians, well, when you see an Ethiopian soldier, do you feel better? They're like, no, because we're not black together.
Right.
They're Jewish and I'm not. And in a Jewish ethno state, you're either Jewish or you're not. Right. And that's the most important thing. And so the way race works is different. That's not to say that blackness doesn't matter. To your point, when Reuven Avergel and other people, and I've had the pleasure of spending some time with them in Israel.
Oh, cool.
With the Black Panther Party, the Israeli Black Panthers. Like Reuben's family's from, he's one of the founders, and his family's from Morocco. They talked about why they use that iconography and why they use that language. It's because blackness is itself a kind of metaphor for social misery and oppression globally. Yeah. So even though they're Mizraim, if the Beta Israel did it, you'd be like, oh, that makes sense. Or the Ethiopians did it. But it's the Mizraim. You might be from Syria, Yemen, or really probably at that time, Yemen and Morocco were two of the big ones. And it's like, oh, yeah, we're Black to the extent that we are being mistreated. We're being put in these camps. And they were in Jerusalem as well. This is why I got to spend time with them. They were in the governorate of Jerusalem, not in the old city. But they're like, we're in Jerusalem, and we have the substandard housing, substandard healthcare, and we're going to protest, and we're going to use the language of the Black Panther and the image of the Black Panther as a sign of our marginality. And Golda Meir said they kept her up at night. That the one group that kept her up at night. It wasn't the PLO.
Yeah.
It wasn't the PFLP. It was them. It was the Black Panthers of the Israeli Black Panthers. Super fascinating stuff. But again, it complicates how we think and talk about race and racialization, because even though they were Jewish, right, and they were legible to the Jewish state, the Ethiopians never were. Right? The Ethiopians, many of them had to do forced conversions, or not forced conversions, what do you call it? Symbolic conversions, reconversions. Right. Because as you all know, the audience may not know, the Olim, the people who make Aliyah, have to get approved by the rabbinate, and the rabbinate runs immigration. Yeah. So like, to even make immigration, you have to be legibly Jewish. And they were like, well, I don't know if they're Jewish. And the people in Ethiopia are like, well, how are we not Jewish? We've never stopped being Jewish. And we were like, and they're doing temple worship. They're not even doing rabbinical Judaism, right? They're doing temple worship. So they're like, our form of religious practice is far older than certainly before the destruction of the Second Temple. So like, we're like OG Jews. In fact, the Ethiopians told me, they said, when we got here, we were shocked because we didn't know there were white Jews. That's really what they told me. It was like the greatest quote ever. Like, I didn't know Jews could be white. It's just a different perspective. Yeah. Yeah.
It is, crazy. I mean, at some point I want to get into it with I'd love an Israeli lawyer who talks about the right of return, or the law of return within Israel, because it's fascinating to me, the fact that I myself could immigrate to Israel and become an Israeli citizen and literally steal the home of a Palestinian. And I'm someone who is half Jewish and secular.
You're half Jewish, Matt?
I'm half Jewish. You didn't know this, Daniel?
All right, no. Well, it's been really good hosting this podcast.
No, God damn it. This is middle school all over again. I dated a girl at camp once, and then I went to her parents' house for Shabbat, and I said, yeah, so I'm half Jewish, and they all looked around, and I never saw her again.
Okay, well, so you're half Nazi, half capo.
But
your opposition to Israel is only half self-loathing.
Well, exactly.
Which half do you hate, Matt?
Honestly, both halves. I'm a piece of shit. I'm a piece of shit, bro.
He doesn't discriminate.
No, but it is interesting to me to be, half Jewish and secular, and still be able. It was actually one of the reasons why I started becoming radicalized on the issue, was the fact that I felt like, I had friends who were Palestinian who literally, can trace their not ancestors, but like their uncle, right. Not even a generation, like one generation away. And yet I had the right to move there and become a full citizen. And it was one of the reasons why I was like, whoa, wait. This sounds kind of, I'm just going to put this out there, like a ethno-state. that's what the people have been saying, and other people have been saying, no, that's anti-Semitic lies. So, yeah, it is fascinating in the way that like the almost like explicit ethnic, style racism and that is within the laws of Israel.
Right.
Yeah.
Which are secular laws too. I mean,
Yes.
because I don't know if is your mother Jewish?
No, it's my father. So I'm not
halakhically
technically Jewish by religion. I'm only Jewish by ancestry.
Right. And again, like when law of return was first created, it was based on halakha, right?
Right,
And so
right.
you had to be halakhically Jewish in
Exactly.
order. And then it was like, numbers are still looking through. You know what I mean?
Right.
Numbers looking
Yeah.
right. Let's expand it. Now, I think there's a legitimate moral reason for that, and that is that throughout history, Jew hatred hasn't been based on halakha.
Of course.
And so if you were Jewish and Hitler, I know they never use the Hitler example, but this is a real Hitler example. Like if Hitler is targeting Jews, Hitler is not looking at whether your mother or your father, if you look at the Inquisitions or whatever, they're not
Right.
they're not asking that. And so
He's
there's
not
a way
consulting the rabbinate.
they're not
Right.
consulting the rabbinate. And so it's quite reasonable for a Jewish state, if the design of the state is to protect Jewish people, to say that we're going to expand the bounds of citizenship, not just
Absolutely.
to what the Jewish law says, but to what practice is, right?
Right.
Although there was a significant Jewish pushback by the more conservatives to say,
Oh, yeah.
Hitler shouldn't be determining our statecraft or our religious sort of commitments here, right? Like,
Right. Yeah.
like either you're Jewish or you're not. But I would argue that to the extent that we're talking about protecting Jewish people, it should be expansive. You should be able to be protected by a Jewish state. Everyone should be able to be protected.
Well, to the extent that that's accepting the premise that a state can protect Jews, but yes, yeah.
Sure. And that's what I'm saying, not an ethno state, but I'm saying to the extent that we're protecting Jews, I'm not pulling out a book, right?
Of course.
You know what I mean? Like if Jews are coming after, if somebody are coming after to kill black people, if Klan members are coming after to kill black people, I wouldn't be looking at Ancestry.com. I'd be like, if you black to the police, if you black to the Klan, you black, come on in, right?
Yeah.
So I get that logic, but the problem is, to your point, is the formation of a state at the exclusion of others based on those logics, and to continue to expand the bounds of the ethno state continually, but still at the expense of the indigenous population. That's where that's where you lose me.
Right. And what's interesting to me about it, and one of the reasons I want to talk to someone who's familiar with the specificities of the law of return, is I was looking at like the different Jewish community numbers worldwide, and it was like one was like Jewish community who are religious Jews, both parents Jews. The other was half Jews. That was like the expanded Jewish community, and then there's another expanded, and then there's another expanded, and it was like if you like the last tier was like not Jewish religiously, not Jewish by ancestry, not not Jewish in any way.
Really,
but
like Woody Allen movies. Like, what's next?
Yeah, I was like, I don't know what else you have left to claim. I think it's just enjoying Seinfeld. I mean, I'm not sure.
I'm like,
yeah,
gets cold easily.
Yeah. Yeah, autoimmune disorders. I'm not sure, but it was like it just got to a point where I was like, at some point, the via the expanding, definition of what it is to be eligible for the right of return, or the law of return. At some point you just go like, is this definition just going to be like expanded to, are you someone who believes that the state should exist? And that's kind of, I think, what it is. I think that's where this seemed to be going, in which it becomes explicit that the state is being perpetuated only by those who are already a part of the cult, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's when it reaches peak Animal Farm. Like when when ideology and affiliation and allegiance to power and the power system becomes the dividing line.
Yeah.
Now it's not about for the benefit of all animals. It's you serve the structure that we've built with the ostensible goal of protecting all Jews. But now if you're opposed to it, die Jew, die.
Yeah.
Don't quote me out of context.
Oh, I'm already cutting this apart. I'm an APAC op. I'm
Play the
just
long
here.
game. Yeah.
I'm playing the long game. But yeah, it is the way in which I think Zionism is become kind of a replacement for Judaism. The way it's kind of usurped it in a way is, for me, I think one of the. It's why I think it became very apparent to me what was going on. I mean, Zionism itself not being a religious but a secular thing. And the way in which, like, I would be, if you're half Jewish on the wrong side and Zionist, like, AIPAC loves you.
Good.
You're good. How
hear
dare you ask, what parent, but then it's like, if you're a critic of Israel and, being in public and half Jewish on the wrong side, then it's like,
Well,
you're
birthright.
yeah.
Birthright is the new circumcision.
Yes. Yeah. That's
That's
true. Yeah.
Mark, we hear a lot about Christian Zionism. And we hear obviously a lot about the Christian tradition and American Black lineage. Is Black Christian Zionism a thing? To what extent do Black churches either participate or not participate in that whole rigmarole?
I think if you look at mainline, and mainline Christianity is a complicated thing too, because of it's always moving and shifting, as all faiths are. But I think my short answer would be most Black churches aren't talking about this issue, right? They're just not. And as they become more and more sort of beholden to gospels of prosperity, which are like neoliberal gospels of, health and wealth, this just isn't the thing.
Right.
But there are large churches that are often bought and paid for by lobbying groups, whether it's pro-life lobbying groups, whether it's pro-Israel lobbying groups, whatever the lobbying group, whether it's just the good old-fashioned Republican Party. And AIPAC has done an excellent job of infiltrating Black churches and Black colleges, universities, right? HBCUs and Black churches, and doing early interventions. So you'll go to the Black church, you'll see trips to the Holy Land. And then you make that trip to the Holy Land. And I spent a lot of time in Jerusalem watching Holy Land trips, both from West African pilgrims and from Black Americans. And I watch where they go. I follow them. I guess I feel like I sound like an op, but I follow them
in a van with the camera and some recording equipment.
That's all. But I watch where they go, right? They go to the Stations of the Cross. They, go down Via Dolorosa. They go see Jesus, or apparently he's not supposed to be there, right? If you're Christian. And I go and watch all this stuff happen. And I watch where they don't go. They don't go to the Muslim Quarter. They don't go to any of the Arab stores. They're told, don't stop, don't look, don't buy. They don't enter through Damascus. They enter through the New Gate or Jaffa Gate on the other side, right? And all of these are important things. They bypass all of the markers of marginality, all the markers of Palestinian oppression. They don't see a lot of occupation, right? They hang out in West Jerusalem, not East Jerusalem. They do all of the things, and they go and see Jesus in Bethlehem or the Manger Square. That's the only West Bank they're going to get. Or maybe, because even if you go to Hebron, you're going to go to its Area C, and you're going to see what you need to see, and then you get right out of there, right?
Yeah.
And so they're strategically positioned to see Jesus and to take in Hasbara, right?
Yeah.
And have no encounter with Palestinian people or Palestinian suffering. And so you come back from the church, I think, even more ensconced in kind of the Israeli narrative, which is already anchored by the kind of misrepresentation of the Old Testament Bible, because Black people have always appealed to the book of Exodus. We've always been Old Testament Exodus folk, because we've likened our journey in the wilderness of North America to the sojourn of the Jews who were seeking freedom after being in Egypt. And so
we sing one of your songs at the Passover Seder. Go down Moses is like a big hit at a lot of Jewish cities.
I was thinking Frankie Beverly before I let go, but both are solid songs. And but yeah, but like, you're exactly right. And so there's a connection. We see ourselves as the children of Israel, symbolically, right?
Right.
The Nation of Islam did that and saw that, right? So that's just a staple. So we're attached to Exodus, which allows us to imagine Israel not just as old school kingdom, right? or Canaan, not just old school land, but we think of Israel, we link that Israel to the state of Israel, to the nation state of Israel. And that conflation. And then if you're any kind of evangelical Christian, as y'all know, this whole stage play ends with Jesus coming back and forcibly converting or killing folks, Jews being forcibly converted or killed.
Yeah, that's the bummer part.
Right. That's like it's the terrible end, right? To the movie. And so Christian eschatology in general is bound up in anti-Semitic. Let me not say that. Let me say that differently.
Yeah.
The evangelical, the right-wing extremist evangelical Christian eschatology is bound up in a very particular and problematic reading of scripture that then leads to Jewish suffering in their sort of imaginations.
Right.
And so I'm not cascading Christianity. I'm saying just the evangelicals have it messed up.
Yeah.
And so they have a material investment, an economic investment, and they also have a spiritual investment in this Zionist narrative. And so the black church and the black schools, they get to them early, and it's easy to convince somebody to believe something that's in their best interest anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Mark, I know that you have to take off. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Everything I've been seeing you've been doing is fantastic, man.
No, man, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate your humor on social media. And I like the show, and I'd love to come back, man.
Yeah.
Have I been your most moral guest?
I think you're, top 5. Top 5 most moral, like.
I'll take that.
Yeah, listen, we've had a lot of great guests, Adolf Hitler. No, I'm just kidding.
Gotta be above him.
Yeah, you're way above Hitler. Don't worry.
Okay. You've been one of our most oral guests. I'll put it that way.
Yes.
What have you been hearing?
What have you been hearing?
I actually just meant that. I know how that sounds, but pound for pound in terms of just
pound for pound oral. You heard it here first.
I'm at the top.
Yeah, just pounding.
I'm trying to compliment you. The density. I'm not even going to try. It's a genuine
so dense.
From the heart.
It's so dense.
You're dropping gems. You're dropping knowledge.
Yes.
You're educating us. Man. You're uplifting our show.
I love you guys, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Okie dokie.
Producer Adam says pound for pound, the most top.
Pound
for pound, the least loads refused.
That's right. This guy does not refuse loads. This guy. Mark, thank you for coming on. If you're hearing this, postscript discussion, we do love you, despite all the talk of loads. Before we get out of here, first, I think we'll take a quick commercial break, and then when we come back, I want to play some Hasbara and talk to you about that. Are you ready? Are you ready? Hell yeah. All right, stick around. We'll be right back. And we're back. Okay. Great interview with Marc Lamont Hill. Daniel, you don't mind that I'm half Jewish on the wrong side, do you? Right? You're not going to be like camper at middle school? The girl who stopped dating me?
I'm gonna be the kid, and I always relied on the kindness of these kids at my own summer camp.
Sure.
I'm going to be the kid who's friends with the mean popular kids and will make fun of you, or at least will laugh at them making fun of you. But then in the off hours, when I see you crying on the side, I'll come and I'll check in and I'll let you know. And I remember when, what was her name? Megan. Well, I shouldn't say it. Let me, I don't want to. She may.
You don't want to call out Megan?
God willing, she's still there, but I'll call her Megan Feinstein.
Sure.
She came over and she said, Daniel, I know it's really hard right now that you don't fit in. Like basically, there are people who are cool, and you're not cool. But one day, you won't be weird, and you'll like I'm not exactly cool myself, but I'm cooler than I was. I used to be in your position. So if you just hang
I
in,
used to be
so
a
that's
piece of
who I
shit.
would be for you.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so sweet.
Yeah.
That's the best. That is, I think we knew the same Megan. This sounds like a very
Actually,
similar experience I've had.
I
Yeah.
think the technical term for that kind of camper is a capo,
Yes, that's right. That's a
working for the oppressor.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so to talk about some Hasbara recently, I want to talk about this line that's been going on. We talked about it a little bit with Omar yesterday, but the idea that Hamas is ultimately responsible for, the genocide that's going on, and that Hamas is actually doing a genocide of Hamas.
I don't know why, but I just got Walter Peck in my head being like, they caused an explosion.
I don't know Walter Peck. No,
Ghostbusters.
Wow, yes.
The EPA guy, like just blaming the Ghostbusters for all the shit that happened as a... Anyway.
I love the first and last name of a guy who I just remember as the dude who said, or who got told he had no dick by Bill Murray.
Played by William Atherton.
Should I know him?
No, but that was the actor.
I'm glad you knew that. But so the line of Hamas is responsible ultimately for everything is like something you see everywhere. I mean, every single Hasbara has been saying it over and over. It is like the way you get away with murder is to say, actually, if you think about it through, through the laws of physics, this is actually Hamas's fault. And
if it was bad, it was Hamas.
That's right. And it leaked over into the world, my favorite world, the world of comedians. So Eliza Schlesinger put out a post, and I think she deleted it shortly after, in which she explained this point. And I'm going to play a little bit of Eliza here.
And the terrorists would say, we don't care if they get killed, which is what Sinwar has been saying since day one. It was in my last post. It's documented. He doesn't care about Palestinian lives in the way that the rest of the world seems to care about them. So one would think, well, perhaps we should go after the terrorists that are fighting this proxy war using Palestinians. But instead, you want to take out Israel, the only democracy in the entire Middle East. So once again, free Palestine from Hamas, because that is your problem. And it soon will be the rest of the Western world's problem.
What? So a lot going
analysis.
On. Yes, great analysis. Now, Eliza is someone who was louder at the beginning of the war, quote unquote, and then has been quiet once the pushback, I think, for her got to a degree where she's like, well, it's okay, I'll just keep these views to myself. But this is not to specifically pick on Eliza, but this is to pick on this level of thinking. The idea that Hamas is therefore responsible for everything that is happening to the Palestinians, to me, is the most victim blamey thing that I can possibly it's I don't know how people can say it with a straight face without thinking to themselves like, wait, am I making an argument for domestic abuse? You know what I mean? Like there's
or at the very least, like, because you could say, well, Hamas aren't the main victims of the genocide, right? It's the but it's like it's making the argument for like beating your wife's kids, like beating your step kids.
Yeah. It's a way of saying, if fucking, if you don't stop asking for it, then aren't you really to blame for that black eye wife of a cop? You know what I mean?
I found myself in a very, very strange and awkward position a few months ago in Los Angeles. I was at an evening of mostly Arab and Palestinian people. And, I won't name any names because I don't even remember them. But the organizers were, it turned out to be kind of almost like an intervention. And there were several Palestinians there who were trying to convince their fellow Palestinians that they should be blaming Hamas for everything.
Yeah.
Like they were like strongly anti-Hamas Palestinians. And up to a point, I was willing to listen. I'm like, okay,
Sure.
internal critique,
Yes.
dissent. Let me not fall into simplistic thinking either.
Yes.
There's a lot of people in Palestine and outside of Palestine who have been critical of Hamas and the Islamification of the pro-Palestine struggle for a long time. And even if I want to pin that on Israel, saying that they didn't want a secular moderate partner in the PLO, interesting to hear Palestinians criticizing their own and all that. But at a certain point, I found myself in this odd position of like vociferously arguing with this one particular guy who, it just struck me, had gone all the way over to like sympathy for the devil and utter victim blaming. And it was this bizarre thing. I'm like, am I allowed to argue with this guy? I mean, he was actually born in Gaza.
Right.
But it was that sentiment isn't limited to Jewish Zionists.
Oh, sure. And it kind of like brings up something that I think, Mark was talking about a bit, which is, the idea of, the idea that there are, anti-Black racism within Palestinian society as well, as within the Zionist Israeli society, and kind of how that is something that, whether or not it is inconvenient to the narrative to talk about, exists and should be, brought up. But to me, I look at it as like within the context of everything. It is kind of, I can't help but see it as a clearly just an argument for collective punishment, where you can't help but blame Hamas for every single thing, and it is a way to skirt any kind of accountability yourself. But it's also a way to say like, hey, if these people don't want to get genocided, then maybe they should have thought about that before they voted for Hamas, or maybe they should, should be yelling about Hamas. It's like, it's this attempt to, place Israel as now the people who are freeing Palestine, which I find to be like the most disgusting thing. Because at the end of the day, even if they were to get rid of Hamas, let's say that happened, that does not actually free Palestine from anything, because occupation still exists, apartheid still exists, and that is, those in and of themselves are morally abhorrent things. You know what I'm saying?
And once Hamas is gone, Israel's made clear what it wants to do with Gaza. It wants to, dig the whole thing up, turn it over, and turn it into, I don't know, a resort or something. There's also something funny implicit in that argument, which is like, Sinwar knew full well how Israel was going to respond, and he did it anyway, which means he doesn't care about Palestinian lives, which means it's his fault. But look at what that takes for granted. Mm-hmm. He knew, you knew we were genocidal maniacs.
Right.
You forced us to act on our genocidal mania. It's on you, bro.
Yeah. It's on you. You knew that we were going to do this shit to you. And in fact, I have another video I want to play of just a horrifying, disgusting liberal Zionist who's out here just spreading,
I hate this guy.
Yeah, this is just one of the worst guys. Here he is.
I'm so sick and tired of all of you out there talking about Israel's doing a genocide. All of you are just falling for Hamas's trap, okay? This was all Hamas's secret evil plan this whole time, was to do October 7th, and that would get us so mad that we would go do a genocide, okay? This was all part of the plan. Step 1, do October 7th. Step 2, die from genocide. Step 3, everybody mad. And I've seen this kind of thing before, all right? This isn't new to me. My dad is a cop, and many times He has been forced to use violence on people who were clearly just asking for it, especially like my mom. This is what Hamas is making us do. We don't want to do this. They made us kill their women. They made us kill their children. They made us starve them. They made us go into the rubble of what was once a Palestinian girl's bedroom and make a TikTok of us wearing her lingerie. This is all part of their plan to make us look like we're weird. But we're not weird because we know it's them who is making us do it.
It's so true. It's so true.
Yeah, they just left those canes and wheelchairs out in the street, taunting, just daring those Israeli soldiers to take
You knew we were
going to
take a photo with it. You knew we were going to do a bit. It's like, you know, it's with you. It's like leaving a little wordplay opportunity open for you. You can't help yourself. You know,
they know that Israeli soldiers are just suckers for whimsical,
whimsical genocide photos that, you know, they look funny because people are laughing. You know, that's how you know something is lighthearted, when people are laughing while they're doing it.
I mean, are there pictures of Nazis with, like, I know at the Auschwitz Museum, you got the big pile of shoes, but are there pictures of like Nazis
them trying on the
wearing
shoes,
wearing the shoes on their hands, and,
right?
Like,
doing a fashion
puppet
show.
shows with them?
Yeah. Wow, check out this drip. Oh, I'm dripping now.
No, they saved it for their cabarets. You know,
that's
they
right.
Saved it for their not. They didn't do it out on the fucking field of battle.
Yeah, exactly. They took that shit inside like gentlemen.
Have some dignity.
Yeah, it is just
rise to the level of dignity and nobility of the SS.
The SS. In closing, I find the argument in and of itself to be repugnant, and repugnant because it is also wielded by people who consider themselves to be, like, you know, liberals, because it is just such a I think transparent way of you know, changing the accountability so that you don't ever have to feel bad about your choice to believe and support Israel and everything it does. You can watch a dead baby being held by their parents, and you can feel justified in the fact that, you know, it's not your fault or the fault of the state that you support.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
Pretty gross stuff. But you know what's not gross? You.
What's not gross, man?
You're not gross. You're a lovely guy. And I thank you for being the co-host of the Most Moral Podcast. Because
I bless the day that you looked at me and said, I can't do this anymore alone. Help me. I'm going insane.
I need a full Jew. I need someone, both parents. I need
someone who's fully circumcised, not just on one side.
Yeah, I just half of my dick is in, and the skin flap is just fucking flapping in the wind. I need someone who's got no skin flap. I'm talking just dry dick all times. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Help me out.
I want you to come.
Oh, thank you. That was Benjamin Netanyahu. Oh God!
As we slowly but surely transition into an AM drive time talk show. You know,
listen, that's where this is going. Come on, this is where it's going.
Tough neighborhood.
It's tough neighborhood.
It's Bad Hasbara with the Liebtard and Most Moral Mate in the morning.
You're good.
Oh, all right, Daniel Mate. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to Marc Lamont Hill for coming on and talking with us here over at Bad Hasbara. Please support us. Patreon.com/Bad Hasbara. Email us.
We got some good guests coming up too, which we're not going to tell you about. But next 2 weeks are going to be fucking baller.
Yeah, this is a lot of fire guests, and I'm like, oh shit, we gotta get more song parodies done, bro. we gotta entertain this audience. Am I right?
Crazy Jews.
Thank you. Email us, badhasbara@gmail.com. And all right, Daniel, take us on out of here with a until next time, from the river to the sea. Marc Lamont Hill was great on BET and is great on this current stuff. All right,
Yeah, I blanked, man.
Me too. I always forget. I should really prepare one. Maybe Adam has one. Nope, he doesn't. Okay.
You're good.
I'm not good. All right. From the river to the sea.
Let's all go listen to BDP.
There we go.
Because it's June. It's Juneteenth.
It's
Let's go put on
Juneteenth.
some black music. There, I said it.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with saying it. It's black music. All right.
We all love it, folks.
We love it. All right, we're
struggling.
Done. Yes, help.
Jumping jacks was us. Push-ups was us. Krav Maga us. All karate us. Take